It's Victoria here from Inspiration Den. I've popped on today to do our Tuesday Facebook Live. So last week we talked all about what well-being is, and we had a think about the definition and what it means for people and how it works for us, sort of quite generally. So I wanted to delve today a little bit into how that might work a little bit more personally. So for each individual person, we're going to delve into well-being and self-care and what that looks like and what that might look like for you. So I've got a few different ideas that we can chat about. There is a really lovely framework that lots of people in wellbeing used, and it's either called the areas of wellbeing or ways to wellbeing. So it can be called either of those things, and they're both exactly the same. But it's a really nice framework, and it gives us some quite good guidance and some guidelines as to what we can do, where to look, which different areas of our life, that kind of thing. And the ways to wellbeing is split into 5 different areas. Okay, so we'll just talk very briefly about those. So the first one is being active. So if you can get out and about, if you can do some movement outside, is a really great thing for your well-being. But any kind of movement, any kind of activity, it doesn't have to be really hard, it doesn't have to be really strenuous, it can be gentle, it can be slow, but anything that gets your body moving is really great for your well-being. So that's the first one. The second one is connecting, and that is really about connecting with other people. So it can be very simple connections, just saying hi to people on the school run or when you sat at the bus stop or anything like that. It can be positive or what's the word I want? Really worthwhile social media connections can be a great way of finding connections. So connecting is really important for our well-being. If you think of all the isolation and the loneliness that there is in the world, it's such a awful thing, and it's such an epidemic, and it has such negative impacts on our physical health as well as our mental health. So having some kind of connections, whether it's daily or weekly or however it works for you, is really important. And there's loads of ways that we can improve our connections with people. You know, it can be having a cup of tea with a friend, you know, it can be joining a group such as our Wellbeing Warriors or our walking group, or, you know, there's loads of different groups. If you have a hobby or you know, there's something that you enjoy, there's groups for everything, or support groups for everything. So anything that you could possibly be interested in or need help with, there is a support group or a community group for you. So do have a think about how that could work for you and how you can improve your connections. So that really is very important for our well-being. The third area is noticing, and this really comes a lot of the mindfulness and meditation and gratitude and all those kind of things that are very popular at the moment. But really taking notice of the small things, being grateful for those small things, getting out in nature, all those kind of things, again, are really good for your well-being. The fourth area for well-being is giving. Now, this is quite an interesting one, because as soon as we say giving, we automatically think of giving money to charity, that kind of thing. But actually, giving can be so much more than that. Any act of kindness, any act of giving time or giving support or giving friendship, volunteering, all that kind of thing, it all comes into giving, and it makes us feel amazing. All the things that we do together, you know, all the support and the help that we give to each other, it really does make us feel great. So giving is a great thing for us to be doing. It makes everybody else feel good, and it makes us feel good too. So that's something to think about. And the fifth and final area of well-being is learning. Now, this could be formal learning, it could be doing an evening class or an online course, it could just be reading about a topic that you're interested in, or Googling, researching online, that kind of thing. But anything that keeps you learning, keeps your brain active. It could be learning about yourself, doing self-care, self-development, personal development, all that kind of thing. Really great to keep your brain working, and really great to make us feel good too. So those are the 5 areas of well-being. I'll just recap those very briefly for you. They are being active, connecting, noticing, giving, and learning. And that is one way that we can check in with ourselves and see how we're doing, see what we can improve, see what we're doing well at already, see where we can make changes, that kind of thing. Okay, so that's a really nice framework that I just wanted to introduce really briefly that might give you some areas to work on, might give you some ideas. There was something else that I wanted to talk to you about as well, and that was more connected to self-care. So a lot of things that we do with well-being kind of come under the bracket of self-care, and self-care really is just about taking the time to look after ourselves properly. That's all self-care means. A very big part of well-being, you know, we talked last week about it's how we feel and how we function. And if we don't take care of ourselves properly, you know, we're not going to be able to function properly and we're not going to feel great. So if we're thinking about self-care in particular, then there probably is more, but I'm going to talk about 4 different areas of self-care. Some of this will overlap with what we just talked about, but it's just a different way of thinking about it. If you like the 5 areas of well-being and that works really well for you, absolutely fine. This is just a different way of thinking about it. The 4 different areas of self-care are physical, so taking care of our physical self, our physical body, emotional, social, and spiritual. Now, when we talk about spiritual, it's not necessarily just religious. It could be, if you are a religious person, then that could be an aspect of it, but a lot of us aren't religious, and that's absolutely fine. We can still be connected with spirituality, with the universe, or with nature, or with noticing, you know, however that might look for you. So if we have a very quick think about what some of those areas might look like for you. So a lot of it is quite self-explanatory. You'll probably have thought about a lot of these different things, but maybe the odd thing may be something you haven't considered or something you haven't thought about. So in terms of physical care, obviously sleep and rest is really important. If we're not having enough sleep and we're not resting our body when it needs to be rested, then we're going to go into burnout and we're going to just drive ourselves into the ground and not do ourselves any good at all. Stretching, movement, any kind of movement that you can do is really, 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 really great for your body and really great for your well-being. So any kind of movement at all, like we just spoke about before, is really, really good. Walking particularly is fabulous. Stretching is brilliant. Physical release, which I thought was quite an interesting one, that might be relaxation techniques, it might be massage, different therapies, that kind of thing, but actually releasing the tension that we have in our bodies is really important. So that might be something to think about. Healthy food, obviously, getting some more healthy food into our diet is always going to be a good thing. So that's always fabulous. Keeping on top of our medications, if we need to take them, is always really great. You know, obviously can be, you know, life-saving in a lot of cases. And if it's not, then it's still really important. You know, if keeping on top of your medication is really, really important, and it doesn't matter what that's for, whether it's for mental health, physical health, whatever condition it happens to be, you know, it's really important to keep on top of that for our self-care. So do definitely do that. So yes, massage, therapies and managing conditions. So they're just some ideas of how we can look after our physical bodies. There's lots of other ideas, but I'm just throwing a few out there. So to go on to emotional care then. So a lot of the things that we can do to take care of our emotional sides is stress management. You know, anything that comes into that stress management bracket is going to help us in our emotional wellness. There we go. We'll put it that way. So things like forgiveness are really important, and that can be forgiving other people as well as forgiving ourselves. You know, carrying around all those negative feelings of shame and guilt and embarrassment and anger and frustration, they just weigh us down and make us feel awful. So if you can forgive other people, doesn't mean forget what they've done, but come to some kind of place of forgiveness, really will help you to feel lighter and to feel better. And again, forgiving yourself again is really important. You know, we don't necessarily mean to hurt other people most of the time, but sometimes it happens, and you know, we do need to forgive ourselves if we can. So compassion and kindness, all those kind of things, patience. Counselling is a great way of looking after our emotional resilience. Talking, sharing, all those kind of things. You know, sometimes we have traumas, and sometimes we have deep-seated issues and fears and things that we need to discuss and things that we need to let go of. And sometimes we can do that with sharing with a friend, sometimes we can do that with counselling or something a bit more formal, or maybe CBT, something like that. But whatever works for you is always, you know, the way to go. And we don't know if we don't try. So it might be that you try some things out, maybe it doesn't quite help, maybe you try something else, and that's always good too. So taking time out is always good for our emotions, just to have that little bit of a buffer, a bit of a gap, giving ourselves a bit of respite so that we can then come back stronger. Definitely. Getting organised is a great one for me. I'm very one of those messy desk, messy mind kind of person. If my house is messy, then my brain is definitely messy. So getting organised is really good for me. So not just sort of like physically the house, but also like my diary, making sure all my planning is organised. I know what I'm doing and what I need, you know, what's coming up and all that kind of thing. But getting organised is really, really good for my mental well-being and my emotional well-being, definitely. Gratitude is a really big one as well. You know, actually, things like a gratitude journal where you jot down 3 things that you're grateful for and try and do 3 different things every day, really kind of puts life into perspective a bit, actually. You know, I think we get very bogged down in the big things sometimes, or maybe the little things sometimes, and actually we have a lot to be grateful for. You know, if we look around us, we have a huge amount to be grateful for, and that doesn't mean that everything's perfect and everything's going fabulously. You could be, all sorts of things could be going on around you, but actually there's still always things to be grateful for. So that's a really good one, gratitude. And having realistic expectations actually is a massive thing for our emotional wellness and our emotional resilience. I think we often have far too high expectations of ourselves and of others. And if we can try and make those a little bit more realistic, then we can take some of that pressure off, and we can just kind of release a bit, let go a bit, and kind of go with the flow a bit more, which is always going to make us feel better. Okay, so moving on to social. So time together is the most basic thing. So whatever that looks like for you, finding time to have coffee with a friend, going to the cinema, going out for a drink, having a day trip. It doesn't matter, joining a group, it doesn't matter what that is or what that looks like, but it's having time together, whether it's friends, whether it's family, whether it's people you don't actually know that well, but you can still be in a group, you can still make connections, and you can still be sociable. So have a think about that, is very important. Asking for help also kind of comes into this category. It's something that we're not always that great at, but asking for help and asking for support and asking for our needs to be met is so important. You know, why do we not do that? We really should do that more, definitely, myself included. So positive social media can be great for our social wellness. Now, social media is awful in a lot of ways, but it can also be great in a lot of ways. People often say to me, "Oh, I don't do Facebook, I don't do social media, I don't do this, that, and the other," because they've seen a lot of the press, a lot of the hype about the negative side of social media, and it can be absolutely awful. As you know, we've all witnessed, we've all seen, it can be horrendous, but there are positive sides to it as well, and if you can make it work for you, then that's great. I spent a bit of time, probably even more than a year ago now, and I went through I don't really use a lot of the others, it's mostly just Facebook that I use, but I went through my Facebook and I just unfriended anybody that put negative things up that used to come up in my feed, and unliked loads of pages that I just wasn't interested in anymore, and that again brought up negative things for me. And I went through and deliberately found loads of pages to follow that had well-being quotes and positive things and kindness videos and all those kind of nice things that I like, and things that matched with my values and with my likes and my hobbies and all that kind of thing. And actually, my Facebook is a lovely place. You know, all of my Facebook is filled with, well, or 99% of my Facebook is filled with loveliness. It really is. And if anything comes up that I don't like, I just block it, or I unlike it, or I unfriend it. And I just think, do you know what? I actually enjoy being on Facebook most of the time, because I've made it such a nice place to be. Anyway, I've rambled on about Facebook for quite long enough. So yeah, social media can be positive, but you just need to be quite wary about how you use it. Any type of communication is a great thing. Pick up the phone, send somebody a message, just say, hey, how you doing? You know, check in with your friends, check in with your family. It's really easy just to send a message, isn't it? And how often do we do that? It might be lovely, actually. You know, if you went through your phone book, maybe from A to Z, and worked your way through over like a few months or something, depending on how long your contact list is, and just send a little message to everybody in your contacts list, one at a time maybe, so you don't get bombarded. But how lovely would that be? Wouldn't that be a great thing to do? Maybe do one a day. Start with the A's and work all your way through. I think that's a great thing to do. So looking at your support systems is a really great thing for your social well-being. So some of us are really lucky that we have great support systems. We have friends and family, we have groups, and we have support systems in place. Some of us are not so lucky. Maybe our family are not so close by. Maybe we don't have a lot of family. You know, maybe we don't have visitors. Maybe we don't have people that message us and call us. So if that is the case, then we need to make a little bit of an extra effort to find ourselves a support network. And I'm not saying that's necessarily an easy thing to do, but for our well-being, sometimes we have to make an effort, and sometimes we have to really try, and sometimes we have to push ourselves out of our comfort zones. So it is worth looking at, and it might be that we have a few people that we just, you know, if we're having a bad day, or, you know, have an arrangement with somebody saying, oh, you know, if I'm having a really bad day, can I just call, you know, can I just give you a call, or can I just send you a message and check in, you know? It might be that you need some help with the kids, or it might be that you need some help with the housework, or it might be so that you need help at work, or, you know, whatever it is. Knowing who those people are around you that can help you takes away some of that panic when you're having a bit of a moment, or you're having a down day, or you're struggling with something. If you've already identified who those people can be, it takes one of the barriers, one of the stumbling blocks out of the way. And boundaries is the last thing in that category. So that's your personal boundaries, knowing when to say yes, knowing when to say no, knowing what you're happy with and what you're not happy with. And that's in all aspects of your life, whether it's relationships, work, friendships, anything at all. Knowing what your values are and where your personal boundaries lie is really important, that we're not overstepping those, because that is really detrimental to our well-being. So that's something really good to have a think about as well. The last category here is spirituality. Now, again, we talked very briefly, it could be that you're religious and you bring in your prayers and your church going, or your temple going, or your religious communities, and if that's the case, that's fabulous. Spirituality is not just about religion. Spirituality is for everybody, and you work it, same as everything, in whatever way works for you. That's probably the thing that I say best, say most really. Do whatever works for you. Absolutely, just do that. But it's so true, you know, in all areas, in all aspects, it works for everything. You know, if it works for you, do it. It's great. Go for it. So anyway, just some ideas in terms of spirituality. You might have some time alone. And just being with yourself and being comfortable with yourself is really great for getting to know our values and connecting to the universe and all that kind of thing. Is fabulous. Meditation is obviously great. Prayer, journaling, maybe creating a sacred space or a quiet place, you know, where you can just go and take a few minutes out, maybe a couple of times a day or just for 5 minutes here and there or whatever it is. Yoga is great for spirituality, all those kind of things. Any kind of therapies, crystal healing, Reiki, reflexology, they're all really good for connecting with the universe and spirituality and grounding us to the earth and all those kind of things. Really, really good. Being out in nature is massively important for our spirituality. You know, just knowing that we're actually a very tiny part of such a massive thing, you know. I don't know, like I could go on for hours and hours about being out in nature and how important that is, but actually I think most of us kind of know, do we not? Maybe we can talk about that one day. And doing things that we love might not necessarily come into spirituality, but actually, you know, if we're enjoying what we're doing, we're finding joy in that moment, we're alive, you know, in that respect it kind of comes into spirituality. So those were the 4 different areas of self-care. Briefly to recap, we've talked about the 5 areas of well-being, or the 5 ways to well-being. I'll recap them for you. They are being active, connecting, noticing, giving and learning. We then talked about 4 different kinds of self-care, and yes, some of those did cross over, and I know there's quite a bit of overlap there, but just to recap, the 4 different types of self-care were physical, emotional, social and spiritual. So that's recapped very briefly everything that we've talked about so far, and then I just had a couple of things I wanted to finish off with today. So I really like to have a nurture day every now and again. Now, I am in a very lucky position that I can arrange my diary that suits me really well. So my 3 children are all at school now. My husband works full-time and away from home quite a lot as well. I work very hard with Inspiration Den and run lots of groups and do lots of admin and that kind of thing, and have lots of appointments and meetings and all kind of things, but I can arrange my own diary. So I can plan myself a day, sometimes, not always, with an empty day almost, and I can have that as a nurture day, and it's just doing all those things that we just talked about self-care. So I will just think, right, you know, my favourite question, what do I need right now in this moment? It's my favourite question in the whole wide world. Breathe, pause. What do I need right here in this moment? And that's what I will do. So sometimes I will plan things in, like, oh, I really fancy doing some painting, or, you know, I really fancy going for a walk in the forest, or, you know, whatever it happens to be. And sometimes I just take it moment by moment and just think, what do I need? Sometimes it's a sleep, sometimes it's a rest, sometimes actually I really fancy going to get something really nice from the shop for my lunch, a cake for later on, or, you know, whatever it is. But all those different kind of areas, those different types of self-care, those different categories that we just talked about, I try and do something from each category, and that's really the best way of doing nurturing, is try and get all of those areas or all of those categories all encompassed in maybe 1 or 2 activities, or throughout the day, or whatever, however you work. I know that most people can't block out a whole day very often. You might be able to do it occasionally, and if you can, that's fabulous. But you know what, an hour is fine. Half an hour is fine. 5 minutes is fine. If you can have a nurture 5 minutes every day, a couple of times a week, however often you can get it in, if you do it consistently and if you do it regularly, it will help and you will start to reap the benefits. So that was nurture days. And then I've got one last thing to share with you before I go. I saw this really lovely quote and I really liked it, and it was all about how to make people happy. It's lovely, honestly. To make someone happy, just give them 3 things: attention, affection, and appreciation. And if we just think about those 3 things for a moment, really, if we had any one of those three things, would give us a little glimmer of happiness, wouldn't it? If someone gave us a bit of attention, does that not make us feel happy? Does that not make us feel a little bit better? If someone gives us some affection, someone gives us a hug or a cuddle, or pops their hand on your arm, or, it's just, and it could be a caring word, it doesn't have to be a physical affection, it could just be showing you some care and some affection. How good does that make us feel? And appreciation. Do we not all want to feel a little bit more appreciated? If we say thank you and we appreciate what people do for us, does that not feel amazing? So I wanted to leave you with that for today. I'll just read it one more time. To make someone happy, just give them three things: attention, affection, and appreciation. I hope that you have enjoyed today. Okay, take care, everybody.